Dan Rochon, and today I want to talk to you about the hierarchy of communication, which is a concept that I talk about. It's on page 26 of the Real Estate Evolution, which is talking about really how can we most effectively communicate with our clients or with each other or our teammates, our family, our spouses, our children, whatever the case may be. There is a specific system, a specific structure that you could follow to be able to enable you to communicate at the highest of all levels. So let's talk about that today. So when you're looking at the hierarchy of communication, right now you're experiencing a higher level of communication, or at least I'm experiencing that because you're watching this. Now, unfortunately, I can't, or maybe fortunately, hey, no, unfortunately, I'm not able to see you right now, okay, in our communication. And so I'm able to communicate with you at a higher level in this moment than you're able to communicate with me, okay? And that's because you can see me, you can see my smiley face, you can see my high energy, you can see the way that I'm being able to interact with you. Because communication, what it is it's not just the words that we speak. Communication is the tonality of the inflection, the voice, the physiology. When you can see somebody, then you're going to be able to be in a higher degree of connection with them. So that's going to bring us to the top level of the hierarchy of communication, which is face-to-face. Now, right now, so we're going to say face-to-face. As I have my back to you, I'm writing face-to-face. Sort of ironic, isn't it? So face-to-face is the highest level of communication, meaning that we are in the same room. I'm able to see you. You're able to see me. And when we're in that environment, we're able to elevate our communication to the highest level, assuming that we're actively listening to each other. And I'll get into the actively listening here in just a few moments. But right now, I want to just stay with like the hierarchy of communication. So in absence of the ability to be face-to-face, because maybe you're, experiencing a pandemic and it's sort of hard to get face-to-face. And at the very least, if you're face-to-face, your face-to-face looks like this. And so this right here actually, helps inhibit, or doesn't help, right? But it inhibits communication because it takes away a piece of the ability to be able to see each other. However, still do that because it's safe, right? And so, safety first. But in the absence of face-to-face, that we're going to talk about is video. Interestingly enough, when I wrote Real Estate Evolution and I put in for the examples of video chat, I had used Google Hangouts, I had used Skype, and I had used FaceTime. What did I not use? I did not use Zoom, right? Because when I wrote the book, Zoom did not have the audience that it does today. So I guess in the revision of Real Estate Evolution, I'll include Zoom in there instead of Skype. Sorry, Skype. All right, so this is really important because when you're working with your clients, when you're prospecting your clients, the best thing to do is to get them up in the level of communication the best that you could possibly do. So let's sort of map these out here for you for a second. Let me get a better marker, hopefully. All right, so phone. All right, and then number 4 is going to be text. Number 5 is going to be Facebook messaging. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. And number 6 is gonna say get a new marker for Dan. Number 6 is going to be email. And number 7, are you guys ready for this? Okay, I have a 9-year-old daughter. All right, I just want to preface this. I have a 9-year-old daughter. Dad joke, pigeon carrier. All right, right now somebody is laughing. It's probably not you, but somebody's laughing at my jokes. Okay, so absent pigeon carrier, email is really going to be the lowest level of communication that you could possibly have with others, with your, with your clients, with your prospective clients, whatever the case may be. And then you want to then move them up. Man, I wish I had a marker that worked. You want to move them up the level of communication right here. All right, so you want to move them up the level of communication there. And then as you move them up the level of communication, then you're going to be more impactful in the way that you're going to be connected with another. Okay, so if we talk, like, let's say somebody is introduced to you on an email. If somebody's introduced to you on an email, then what is your intention? Your intention is to ultimately get a face-to-face appointment with it. Let's say this is a prospective client. And so the more that you can go from email to face, the quicker you can do that, then the more impactful that you're going to be able to be in the communication. At the very least, though, if you're able to move it maybe some like from an email to a phone conversation, that's good. Okay. And then from a phone conversation to a face to face, or in the time of coronavirus, to a video chat. So again, this could be Facebook messaging, not Facebook like this, but Facebook messaging. It could be Zoom. It could be FaceTime. It could be Skype, and whatever the case may be. So we always want to elevate the communication, particularly if it's a more urgent matter. So what's an example of a more urgent matter? If you're a real estate agent, a more urgent matter could be or would be a price adjustment conversation. So if you're going to have a price adjustment conversation, now here's the benefit of coronavirus, or not, I don't even want to say it like that. Here's the benefit of being in quarantine and of the adoption of technology using video, is that people are more and more likely to be able to get on a video with you rather than a phone call. So let's say you have to do a price adjustment, and you say, "Hey Jane, I'd love to be able to give you some feedback on the showings for your property for the last 2 weeks. Let's do this. Can we set up a quick Zoom or a quick Google Meetup or a quick Google Hangout or a quick Skype or whatever you're using? Can we set that up real quick, Jane? And then maybe we can have a conversation about the property, and then together collectively, you and I could come up with a strategy to be able to sell this house so that you can, and then whatever their motivation is, fill in the blank, so that you can get to Florida, so that you can be with your grandchildren, so that you can get to Detroit for your new job relocation, and you're not delayed in that, whatever that benefit would be. So if that's the case, and you're intending to get them on the phone or to have a price adjustment with them, it's better to do a video conversation than even a phone conversation. And certainly do not text them bad information or information that you're intending to influence. So the challenge that we have with this is that many people would rather be in the text world rather than the phone conversation world, or even higher. And you're not going to be as effective. I was working with an agent last week, and we needed to make something happen. And I was consulting her, coaching her, and I said, "Hey, did you reach out to that person?" And she says, "Yeah, I did. I sent him a text." What happens when you send somebody a text? Who is in control of when that is responded to? Are you in control, or are they? So you already know the answer to that. It is, when I send you a text, you're going to text me back when you want to. Secondly, whose voice are you hearing when you receive that text or even email? You're going to be hearing the voice. Like, let's say you have a bad day, not you, because you don't have bad days. Let's say the person you send the text to has a bad day, and that person that you send that text to is having a bad day. You send them a text that is neutral. Has this ever happened to you before, where you send a text to somebody that's neutral? They're in a crappy mood, and they come back and like, "Hey, why'd you say all that? Da, 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 whatever, right?" You're like, "Dude, I just wanted to, get a piece of bubble gum," right? Like, nothing urgent at all. And so the recipient of that text or email is going to fill in their emotions, and it's going to allow for you to have a lack of communication, which is what we're talking about here, not to be able to elevate the communication rather than to lower it. So you always want to be in a position to be able to go higher in this. Okay, a couple things that I want to just sort of highlight to you in regards to communication is that communication is the response that you get. I know I'm getting a little bit wonky on you here, yet that's something that I would say that when I teach, I get the highest amount of objections on, because people will say, "Well, I'm communicating something, and then they're saying something else, and they weren't listening." Well, them not listening is your communication. I was in a listing appointment last week, and another agent was shadowing me. And when we left, this is what she gave me as feedback, as a positive feedback. And when we left the appointment, at one point during the conversation, I had said something to the prospective client who did hire us, and I just stopped. And I just looked at her. I said, "You're scared right now. You're having a challenge right now with being in connection with me as we go through this information." That's what I perceive. I'm not suggesting that that's who you are, what you're doing. this is what I perceive. Am I wrong in what I'm perceiving? And I said that to her, and it just stopped the conversation. She opened up her eyes. She had something going on in the background, and she said yes. And then we addressed what it was. That was her concern, and then we were able to move on with the conversation. Now, I easily could have left that conversation and looked at the agent over my shoulder and said, "Hey, I said everything I'm supposed to say. She didn't hear me, so that's on her, not me." Okay, and that's typically the way that we see that that human beings approach. There could be another way. You could take full responsibility for your communication and for the response that you get. Even if you get a poor response, you don't have to own that. You don't have to be attached to that. Yet, if you contemplate it, and you say, you know what, the response that I got was not what I was looking for. I mean, it happens to all of us. It happens to me. It happens to you. It happens to all of us. Let's say that response that you get is something that you don't like. I'm not saying to make that mean anything. What I'm suggesting is perhaps in the moment, when you catch it, you can say, oh, goodness, how can I alter who I'm being so that they can then be, in alignment, so that I can help coach them and guide them to so the two of us are in alignment. How can I listen to them more effectively? How can I be empathetic? Because when you're communicating, there's several points of views of communication. There's what do I see me communicating? What do I perceive that you're receiving the communication? If there was a third party over here looking at the communication, what would that third party perceive? What does the universe, the oneness, also known as God, what would God perceive going on in this communication? So there's several different perceptions of a communication, all of which are valid, of which you're in control of one of them. Now, when you can intend to step into the other person's point of view, you're elevating that level of communication. Now, this right here is just like a tactical way to do that. This is talking about how within these tactics that you could be able to increase your level of effectiveness in communication. If you slow down and you say, you know what? If I was watching these two people speak right now, and have you ever been once upon a time they had these things called restaurants we can go out to, right? Have you ever been in a restaurant and you're sitting at a table and you're looking across that table and you see a couple arguing, but you cannot hear any of the words that they're saying? How do you know that they are arguing? It's from their body language. It's from their facial expressions. It's from the speed or the rate of the way that they're talking to each other. You don't need to hear the words. Maybe they're on the other side of that glass wall. You're sitting at a Starbucks. They're on the other side of that Starbucks wall, sitting outside, and they're mad at each other and they're arguing. You know they're arguing. You don't need to hear the words. Okay, so that would be as though if there's a third party observing the conversation. What would that third party be looking at? And then if you really want to get amplified, how would God perceive this communication? Now, how often should you communicate with your clients? Once upon a time, my daughter, Maggie, she's 9 years old now. She went to a Montessori school in Arlington. It was a great school. She was about 2 years old when we enrolled her into the Montessori school. And when she went there, she went in there because she was actually a little bit less than 2, because we went in there because it was the only school in Northern Virginia we could find that would take a child that was still in diapers, and she was at the end of that phase. And so for about 2 years, she went to that Montessori school. And during that time period, a very, very active head of school was really like, she would text me like twice a week. She would email me 3 times a week. She would call me once every 2 weeks. She did like everything except send the carrier pigeon, right? And it was like, oh my goodness, like this lady's crazy. All right. So that was my perception. Fast forward, we go to, we find our dream home. So Maggie's around 5 or 6 at this time, maybe younger than that, because she's still in Montessori. So maybe 4. And so we're in Clifton, Virginia, and we go to a new Montessori school because Arlington at this point was too far to make sense. So we go to the new Montessori school, and about 2 months into it, I looked at my wife, Tracy. I'm like, sweetie, I was like, I'm not so sure about this school. This doesn't compare to the first school. Now, the new school had a policy that you can, as a parent, pop in on them at any time that you wanted to. And so we did that. We popped in on a Friday, not anytime. I think they had like certain hours that you could do that. Like maybe it was a Friday. So we pop in there and, they're just like, hey, just hang out, and whatever. So we pop in there, and for about 2 hours, we're observing, we're interacting, we're having a good time with our daughter. We leave. I look at my wife. I'm like, what just happened? I'm like, that school right there, the new school, was as good as the old school, at least from my perception from observing it. So I started thinking over the weekend. I remember like just sort of like over the weekend thinking like, okay, why did I think, what caused me to believe that the new school was not good and the old school was good? Somewhere over the weekend, I realized, oh my goodness, the only difference between these two schools was the first one over communicated with me and the second one did not. Well, now remember, go back in the story here in a second. Even when I was in that moment of thinking that the first school was a little bit annoying in the way that she was communicating with me, what was, as a consumer, what was my perception? My perception was still that they were far superior than the second school. And in the reality, they were equal. The only difference between those two schools was that one over communicated and the other did not communicate. So as a lesson for business, for real estate sales, what I took out of that was the understanding to say, okay, if we're going to err on the side of over communication versus less communication, we're going to over communicate. And then from that, what I learned was we put in a system where we communicate with our clients 5 times a week, Monday to Friday. And I put in there a structure of 5 times a week we're going to communicate with our clients. And what I found was what that meant was Monday to Friday, they got some sort of communication with me. It could be a text, it could be an email, it could be a phone conversation, whatever the case may be. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, guess what? I can take some time off. I can enjoy some time with my family so that now I have a structure that not only allows for our clients to feel better served, but also allows for me to be able to enjoy the time with my family and take some downtime and rest time, which then serves the clients because when I'm well rested, I can put more energy into serving them. So it all connects together. So that is the hierarchy of communication, some of the nuggets of communication. You can certainly learn more about that in Real Estate Evolution, the 10-step guide to C.P.I. I go through all of that and much, much more in this 275-page book. It is a manual to your success. It is the blueprint to your success. So consider to get your copy today. Thank you.
Give us a thumbs up by clicking the like button below. Don't forget to subscribe to